Hello and welcome to the Upload VR Gamescast. I am your host, Jamie Feltham. We're so glad you could be here. Come in, sit down, get ready for a fun show with my esteemed guest and colleague, Harry Baker.
Hello, it's me. I'm here again this week as we, I guess, intend for me to be here every week now, which will be fun. As you can see, Jamie, I've taken your constructive criticism to heart, and I'm no longer got the full beard. I've gone just the mo. But I did show this to some friends, and they said, it's giving a bit like, cool dad in an animated movie vibes. So maybe it'll change again, because now all I see is that dad in like Inside Out by Pixar.
Well, I also see what was the Netflix film that was done by the guys that did Spider-Verse with a dad that this is gonna alert you with the dad that looked like Kyle.
Oh, I don't know that, but I'll have to look that up now.
Isn't it like, oh, okay, yeah. You look a little like that, but you also don't look too much like Kyle, so don't panic too much.
Okay.
Yeah. It's great to see everyone here yet again. We've got our members to call out, as always, our beloved and most appreciated of members. They include the Shermecker 30, Anthony Mann Wexford, Miles Dyer, Robert Canona's x2x2, Handy Panama, Daniel Barwin, Jerome Houston, Andrew King, Skiva 007, Sexy Bicycle, Devin Miller, Matthew May, Rick Tet, 360 Peekaboo, Smash Reality, Adam Hartzell, the Absolute Boy, and John Westra. Thank you so much for your continued support. It means the world to us. Before we start today, you can see this image behind me. We've got a sponsor for this podcast. We are sponsored by Les Mills Body Combat. Les Mills Body Combat brings the body combat experience to your VR headset with an extensive workout portfolio, top quality coaching, innovative mechanics, and different intensities. Get Les Mills Body Combat on the Oculus Store now. It's out today on Quest, and you can find the description in the link below. So, another way to work out, to punch the things, to duck,
so
to weave,
many ways,
to bob, as they say. And Les Mills is a like actual around the world brand way of working out, right? Like I'm not familiar with it, but you wrote a story on it.
I wrote an article on this when they announced it, and I did not know about them, but yeah, they've got gyms like around the world and a whole like an existing online training program which this takes from, and basically I think it's one of the programs adapted for VR. So
yeah, cool. Well, we're going to be testing that out pretty soon as well, and we'll hear a bit more from Les Mills later in the show. But for now, I think we should get into the news, which is an exciting news week because we get to kick off with a very cool game announcement, which should be happening as this podcast goes live, I believe.
Breaking news.
I'm going to do it on the screen, and you're going to go, whoa, no way.
Drum roll.
Woo! Virtual Reality 2, ladies and gentlemen, is officially in development for the Oculus Quest. This is coming out next week, February 10th, I believe.
Yeah.
From the team at Tentaclaws, who obviously did the first game. You might be familiar with the Under Presents and a bunch of other crazy kind of experiments they've done. Very, very cool studio. The first game was this kind of very surrealist satiric take on the idea of all of us one day existing in VR, uploading our digital consciousnesses to VR and the ways that could spiral out of control. It was like probably like a 7 to 10 hour like story driven adventure, right?
I thought it's not actually. I was reading in the release we've been sent for this. This is a 10-hour game, they say, or 10 plus. And they said the original was only 3 hours, which is about right, because I just played it again yesterday. Okay. And because I think I played it when I got my Quest. It was one of the first games I bought. And I played, I think, I remember finishing it, but I actually only got about 3/4 of the way through, I think, and maybe just kind of left off there. So I went back and did the whole thing again and finished it. And it is about like 2.5 to 3 hours. So this is longer. The other thing I was going to say too is it is coming to PC VR as well. It's Oculus Rift next week on February 10th, and then Steam VR the week after, it says on February 17th.
Oh, that's good. So, I thought it was just a full on.
And it says also there was a line I think saying it may come to more headsets in the future, but nothing.
PSVR2.
So, yeah. I've also got a little summary here of that from Tentaclaws, which I think is quite kind of funny. It sets the pace. So I'll read that out. VVR2 takes place a few years following the reset of Activitude at the end of VVR and introduces players to the newest virtual network, the peaceful retirement metaverse of Scottsdale, where both humans and AIs have uploaded their consciousness for a digital afterlife. But suddenly, Scottsdale's VC funding is pulled, and the servers begin to shut down one by one. Without the ability to log off, players have no choice but to outrun digital destruction, ultimately escaping the metaverse and finding a new home. And it's
I
described
love
as
that.
a action-adventure mech platformer.
Yeah, and
So
so we've got the trailer running on the background here. If you're watching or listening in on audio, there is a lot more interactivity and kind
it's
of shooter
a lot more going
mechanics
on. Yeah,
looking to
yeah,
it
and
this time.
movement. Like, really, I feel like in the first one, you don't move that much. You teleport a little bit, but like not that much. It's really kind of about what you do immediately almost around you, or grabbing things just from the same position. Whereas this looks like, especially because it's a platformer, um, looks like you're doing a lot more moving. I love this, the kind of Beat Saber we're playing on kind of like existing themes. I have high hopes for this because I think the first one isn't perfect, but I think it's really fun and hits some right notes. When it hits right, it hits right. And
It
I
it's
hope
it,
this one is kind of,
it it's a really smart game at the end of the day. The first one, right? Like it's
yeah,
very much
exactly.
in terms of its humor. It's very much Portal vibes. Very robotic
Yeah.
AIs being like ultra polite, but also kind of like deceptively rude and tough and in your face, and like lots of really great little quips. No, no huge spoilers, but I think one of the end things in that is you meet the whale from the Blue Experience. Or like it's like just a generic VR whale that's like tired of being used to showcase VR all the time, which I just think
Yeah.
is such a cool idea. And you were grabbing these different headsets and going between realities by doing that, and like going deeper and deeper into those kind of that inception, what is real, what isn't angle to it as well. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'll just play the trailer again. I'm with you.
Mm.
I'm super excited that this is coming out. I love that in this trailer, it just comes up with these big, brash, bold words, escape the metaverse. And I love that it's
Yeah.
like that, like 6 months after Mark Zuckerberg was like, we're all about the metaverse.
And
I
funny
think it's so
enough, in
cool.
the release it says, development started 2 years ago.
Mm.
Specifically in relation to the metaverse stuff. They were like when we were thinking about the metaverse. So, it's interesting that the timing of this has come, even though obviously the metaverse has always kind of been on the horizon as a thing, we've now in this new era of everyone kind of hearing about it, and this is coming out right after that. So super interesting timing. I think it's really, yeah, I have high
Yeah,
hopes.
there's a lot of foresight into it for sure.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just looks great. I'm hoping because you were talking about when you replayed the first one. I have very fond memories of the first one, but I absolutely agree with what you said. Of by the end, it starts to get a bit
Yeah.
convoluted, and you're like, there's a lot of standing and listening to people talk, and you're like, well, I kind of missed that.
And
Where are we
and
now? What's
also
happening?
I feel like too it the themes and everything it hits really well, but sometimes when you're doing those moments where you're standing and talking, I started being like, am I meant to be standing and listening here? Am I
Yep,
meant to be finding something? Like
yep,
the navigation is a bit not as clear as I think. That's the only part I think that's aged. I think otherwise for a game that's like, isn't it like 2016? There's not a lot of VR games I feel like that I've played from that long ago that have still held up as well as that has in
yeah,
terms of the writing and the general concept and stuff. There's a few others, but like, it hasn't aged that much. It's that just that it's the same. It has the same problems I think it had when you would have played it back then.
yeah,
Otherwise, it's aged really well, and it's still a really
yeah.
fun, relevant take.
It's interesting because it was one of those games that was, I think, at least partly funded by Google and had timed
Yeah,
exclusivity on Daydream first. So I think that was behind why it was such a high end piece of work. And obviously, there's probably some sort of like deals going on to get this one made as well. But it does look like a really solidly put together adventure, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that extra interactivity can kind of help maybe stave off some of that. Like you said, like I got that all the time. The standing around being like, "Is this a puzzle?" And I'm really meant to like
yeah.
realize the moment where I'm not meant to be listening to this guy that's just going on and
Mm.
on and on. But yeah,
And I feel like too they you can see the progression from this through to um the names just escaped me as I was about to say it. The boat
the
one, the time boat, under presents.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I feel like you can see
time
the
book.
progression of like that was they kind of honed in on. I didn't play all of that, but the parts I did play, I didn't feel that I had the same problem of, oh, am I meant to be watching this or doing something? So I feel like that'll transfer over into this, super well. And they did the whole Tempest thing as well. I think there's a whole lot of interesting stuff they've done between the two that might hint at where this is going.
They're definitely like one of the most interesting VR studios out there right now. They're like everything they do. If you haven't checked out the Under Presents, like Harry said, there's the time boat aspect of it, which is kind of like this almost like Invisible Hours kind of like story, like third person diorama scenes where you can move about and visit different characters at different times to kind of piece the plot together, which is very, very cool. And then you had this wider social game where you couldn't actually speak, so all your communication had to be through movement and passing each other objects and everything like that, which was just so fascinating.
I loved it. And there was the whole thing too of sometimes you weren't sure if you were interacting, and like you would wave to someone and they would wave back, and you're like, sometimes I think it was a mirror of you, sometimes it was a computer or a person. There was no kind of, the lines were super blurred of whether it was a person or, I loved that stuff. It was so, I still think about that as like a really weird take on like almost like dehumanizing people compared to like this,
It was certainly a very different take on social VR than Zenith, where you might run into people and they might be very expressive about how they feel about you.
Yes.
But we can talk to that in a bit. Before we do that, let's move on to our second piece of news, which is that Hideo Kojima is rumored to be making a PSVR2 game. I'm hugely excited about this. If it's true,
Are you?
Well, yeah, you're not, are you?
Well, I mean, I'm not a big, Hideo Kojima. I feel like this is good because we have such contrasting almost taste in some of this stuff.
Exactly.
Like I'm not even.
You actually have taste, and I just like all this random crap he comes out with.
Yeah, I don't feel like walking some parcels around a coastline for a couple of hours. Didn't you play all of that on like PS5? You were a big fan, right?
I played all of it on PC. I loved it.
Right. Oh, that's yes. Okay, I remember. Yes.
I really, really like the traversal aspect of it. I just Death Stranding we're talking about, in case you were wondering. I love the Icelandic landscapes and the kind of like every rock was a war to get over, sort of war of attrition kind of feel to it, which it just really,
real
really
challenge.
Yeah, captured me. And so you wrote the story on this one. It is very much a rumor right now. It's not.
Yeah, such a rumor. Biggest pinch of salt. Like get a van of salt dumped at your door. Here we go. I've got a lovely photo of Kojima here.
Oh, good, because my tablet's not working.
I think there we go.
Oh,
there
no,
he
we're
is.
wearing
Look
the
at
same
him.
thing.
Whoa. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's very much a rumor. This is like a leak account on Twitter posted a thing saying that the studio has likely, it was even like worded as likely may have got headsets and could be doing a game or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording.
Well, I did also see there was Kojima apparently did a radio interview 2 weeks ago in Japan, and someone translated that, and again he spoke about this smaller project that Kojima Productions is currently working on. They say they have two projects, one's a bigger one, one's a smaller, more experimental thing, and the translation was kind of rough, but there was a mention of new technology in there as well, so that kind of does lend maybe a tiny bit of weight. And he also said, apparently there was one bit where he said, it's not AR, but, and then apparently he was like, but I have to stop myself from talking. But that's all just rough.
So,
rough
we'll see. Yeah. But it could be interesting. I can see this being a PSVR2 pull. Go on.
What would you want it to be?
Oh, you're the better person to answer that question. I am so out of the loop with him. It's like, to me, it's like I don't have a preference. I mean, I do wonder if Death Stranding was originally was it a PlayStation exclusive, or was that also an Xbox?
Yeah, timed exclusive, and then it came to PC.
Yeah, see, I do wonder.
It's full console exclusive so far.
I wonder if the strategy we're going to see is, take these IPs and games we have and a bit like Horizon. I wonder if there's a Death Stranding spin-off. I don't even know if that's his style of, doing a kind of spin-off thing, but it could be something I can see. You could be trekking through those beautiful vistas in VR with your parcels. Doesn't sound super.
You just have two hiking sticks. and you're
Yeah,
just you
exactly.
use those to get around, and it's like, where can you place the hiking
It's
stick?
like Breath of the Wild climbing, but it's just walking, and
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
and you've just got a stamina bar. Yeah,
And he's just basically like, his big concept for the game is that you need to feel like you've done like a 6-hour hike by the time you've
it's like,
completed.
I
And
want
like,
you sweating in the headset. I want you
I want your
miserable.
back to hurt.
Yeah, yeah, all of them.
You might need medical attention, but hey, that's VR and that's art.
That's it.
I don't know. So obviously he can't work ever since he left Konami. He obviously can't work on franchises like Metal Gear and Silent Hills. I would love to see him take some of the horror concepts that he was talking about for Silent Hills and bring them to VR. Although chances are I wouldn't play that because I wouldn't be able to take it. But it's Kojima, like you said. Like, I feel like he'll just come up with a random crazy concept.
Yeah.
In my reporting over the years, I keep going back to a quote he's often said, which is that he thinks most VR developers see VR as an extension of gaming, and he doesn't think it's that. He thinks it's something that completely different that should be approached in a completely different way.
Which I 100% agree with.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's a really smart take.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see something that's like a shooter or something like that. I think we'll see something very heavily story driven, and it'll be very meta in the sense of actually being meta, not before this word was completely corrupted by everyone else. And it'll be like a story about how this technology we've got on our heads might ruin our lives. It might save the world. That's the kind of tone I would expect him to touch
which
on
is
it with.
Almost similar to VVR2 or VVR1.
100%.
Same kind of arty. It's the arty people, the arty studios, the arty people. They love going for the meta,
the low hanging fruit, if you will.
Be high concept. Make another stealth game.
Yeah, exactly. Be the game that's about the games.
Yeah,
that don't know if the metaverse is a good thing.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and don't give you the answer either.
So yeah, but again, complete rumor. PSVR2. There's a tweet out there somewhere where someone like blanked out like a box or something that people thought might be dev kits or something. Usually we wouldn't talk about such unsubstantiated rumors, but it is quite fun to speculate about what Kojima could potentially do, especially seeing he has such a history.
He's shown
of
interest.
On.
He has shown interest,
exactly.
right?
Yeah,
like,
that's what I was.
So
exactly
it's kind of it's not like it's completely out of the blue.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Harry, let's move on. I think that's pretty much news wrapped up. The only other thing is like a kind of small PSA, which is that Vox Machinae, a multiplayer mech shooter that has been pretty popular over the years, today announced that it's going to be releasing a single player campaign soon as it goes into a full 1.0 launch out of early access. Not much to mention further on there, but cool. Can't wait to see that. That's pretty much the 3 headlines we had out this week. Not much discussion on that one. For discussion this week, we're going to turn to that game that everyone's still playing, impressively. And I'm going to use this thumbnail, because that just works perfect. Oh, that's a video. That'll work too. Harry has played Zenith now. I've played more of Zenith. If you listened in last week, you'll have heard me say to Harry, I don't think this is going to be a game for you, because you've expressed very clearly that you don't like the setup of MMOs. You don't really get the grind aspect of it. Oh, look, there's me. I need to find a new video. Harry, while I'm finding a new video, tell me, is Zenith the game for you?
No, definitely not. But I can appreciate, when having played a bit of it now, I can appreciate that for people who do like this type of game, I think it is clearly doing a lot of things right. You can kind of see why people are liking it. I had a chat with my housemate earlier today, who is a big MMO person. As I said, I think last week he's played lots of WoW and stuff over the years. And the things I was kind of telling him, that I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool. You got that Breath of the Wild thing where you can climb anything and go anywhere, and then you can glide. And he kind of sounded enthused when I was describing the classes and the whole setup. So I think for people who really like MMOs, it is the right kind of, it's got all the right elements in there. So yeah, I mean, there are lots of things I did enjoy it. Like, I love the gliding stuff, because I haven't played Pop 1, which I think this is, kind of taken from that. Love the gliding thing, especially when you told me to switch it over to the precision gliding. Lots of fun. Love the kind of go anywhere climbing mechanic. And I also think underrated feature, the comfort features are pretty comprehensive and good in this, which is great for a game that you're gonna be playing a lot of. Like I get pretty sick pretty fast depending on the game with smooth movement. And I played most of what I played with this. I played with the out of body comfort
Oh yeah,
setting,
yeah.
which I almost wish was an option more often because it's not one you see often. I really like it as a kind of, you press forward on the stick and you see your character move, and then when you stop moving, it zooms back in almost or cuts to the new view. And it had a few other options too, like you can choose whether there's how much time is between letting go and zooming. You can set it. I've got it set for like gliding and climbing. It still shows my view, but moving, it's out of body. It's good to have so many options. I was like, oh, this is good. I can still climb properly. I can glide properly, but most of the movement. And if I'm getting like 30% artificial movement and, for most of it, I'm using the out of body thing, that's pretty fine for my kind of motion sickness level. So that was really cool. I think all games like this should have all of the options this has, if not more. Like, let me just choose exactly what I want. So that was really good. I was happy with that. But yeah, I
Yeah.
guess you could speak more to the MMO.
Well,
How are you feeling after like a week with it now?
well, exactly. So
Or more?
I'm definitely still not anywhere near ready to review it, because it's very much a game that you do have to play socially. You can play
Yeah.
single player, but no one should ever do that with an MMO anyway. And also in this particular MMO, you're going to come across like walls and missions that are just too hard by yourself, no matter the level, because there's like downscaling in areas if you get too high. So you can't go to like level 10 in the first area because the game would be like, you're too high level. You're going back down to 6 while you're in this area, which is, I understand why they do that, though. It also kind of feels a bit counterproductive if you've just spent hours of grinding. But that's kind of again, MMO standard kind of thing. I think the interesting thing to say about it is that if it wasn't an MMO, and this is where the real interesting discussion really, really lies, because I do like the game, but if it wasn't an MMO, you'd think it was pretty terrible, right? Like it is.
Oh yeah.
Janky. The combat is good. It's better than I thought it would be, but it is so like 2016 early Steam VR release kind of vibes. All the missions are just completely,
it's got that like
go and do a certain objective or something like that.
Yeah. To me, it's got that like WoW hall pass of like this thing has so much stuff and it's so big and you can go anywhere, but it gets away with looking pretty terrible. Sorry, WoW fans, but WoW looks overwhelming and like so much stuff on the screen. It's not even there's a beauty in the way that it's done in the style, but as like compared to other games, these games are like, they don't fit in almost. There's a certain kind of language to them. So yeah, exactly. If there wasn't that aspect, you'd be like, oh, this is an interesting like Steam VR demo kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Early access kind of.
Because it has that element.
Yeah.
And it does have, what we did yesterday was me, you, and Xena met up, and we played probably for about half an hour when we could have played for 3, 4, 5 hours if we wanted to, and kept progressing, kept finding new areas, kept meeting new enemies, getting new gear, leveling up our stats and everything like that. The social aspect of the game is really, really powerful, I think. And it does matter that it's in VR because there's this whole new level of expression. Xena, if you remember Xena Alabadi, everyone, former UploadVR staffer, now elsewhere with some company called HTC. I don't know what they do. Maybe they make smartphones. She's a very determined and excited person. So she goes, "Oh, we need to go over here," and just like legs it off before you even get the chance to say, "No, we don't. That's not where we need to go." And in an MMO in VR, I get to have that extra level of expression to be like, "Stop! No, we're going that way," which I think is a really, really fun, interesting new dynamic. And I love the gesture controls and everything like that. So I do think it's still leaning into VR in significant ways, even if it is a very, very traditional and pretty simple MMO as well, right?
Yeah, I think it's simplified it because it's in VR, right? It's like, well, we're not going to overcomplicate it this much yet. I imagine it will get more and more in traditional MMO style too. They'll add more and more to it. They already announced the another class yesterday.
Yeah, the Cyber Ninja.
Yeah, and I think that what you're saying is right too. It's almost like you get rid of the shorthand kind of language that you need to develop for, MMOs where you're typing stuff. You're all like, so many things go in the chat because you're doing, organizing with people in different groups and whatever. Whereas this is much more like, oh, I can just talk to these people as we're doing this. I can gesture. There's less time spent kind of, if you're in a social group with a lot of people, I can imagine it's going to save lots of time and almost like bring a whole new element to it as well.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, like I said, I'm not ready to review it still. I think it's probably going to be late next week because I've had Ultrawings 2 to review, which we'll talking about in a little bit. But I think I need to see some more kind of mission variety to it right now. I think that's the big one for me. There is a lot of kill enough of these, so the stats
go to places.
go to places and like check
Yeah.
it out. And I really hope we get to see, like, there's in the early game there is some different stuff like destroying those crystals in the village. There's definitely some attempt to think a bit outside the box in terms of like traditional MMO structure. I'm currently actually stuck on a dungeon raid, which is like the first one, which is why I really, really need help. But I think me and maybe David Jagno, who you might know, is shilling the game massively on Twitter right now.
About half my Twitter feed has been his tweets being like, "Can't wait to play more Zenith. I'm having so much fun." I'm like,
every day in the run up to it, he was putting out a PSA. And it's like, it's not a PSA if you do it like every 5 minutes, dude. That's just yeah. But bless him, he loves it, and he loves it. Up to like level
I think that's good evidence though that it is catching the right audience, right?
Exactly.
David plays that kind of game. He likes that kind of game. I know he plays like ESO and stuff. So yeah, if he's enjoying it, that's a really good sign.
Yeah, and I think if David was still with us in the upload community, if he took the game and reviewed it, for him it would be an unquestionable essential, right? Like he would love it. He would definitely say that.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm standing with it right now. I do know that some of the bugs in the game are slightly more on the side of that really shouldn't be in here. Like all the text in the game basically isn't finalized on any version I've played. And the video here, we're in the kind of opening city environment, or we were just then. And there's like a chef that gives out quests. And once you get into like his cooking quest and everything like that and start working through that, you realize that hardly any of the text around the recipes and everything like that is finished. On Quest, it still has like the coding for how it should be like laid out. So that's like that needs fixing. And then on PSVR, on the other side of the menu, it's all like overlaid on top of each other. Or some of it is just like running in the shop. It like runs behind the inventory in the shop and you can't actually read it. So, those are all to be worked out. And it is still technically in early access. It's hard because Steam is the only version that says in early access. The other two,
that's difficult.
PlayStation and Quest just say, "Is the game? It's ready." So that's why it ends up getting a proper review from us as well. Because if you don't communicate that to a consumer, it needs to be subjected to a proper
you have to presume
review,
someone's bought it as if they think it's a full release. Yeah.
So I'm hoping by this time next Thursday, let's say, I'm hoping I'll have leveled up significantly more, seen significantly more of the game, and we can go in and do our proper final review. But that we'll see how we go. For now, I want to remind
the bottom line still seems to be, if you want a VR MMO and you love MMOs, this looks like a pretty great option for doing that at the moment in terms of what's available in VR.
Yeah, exactly. And with that partial roadmap and the fact that it's clearly just been a massive success, like everyone I know in the VR community has either bought it or said, this isn't my type of game, but I think I'm going to have to check it out based on how much everyone's raving about it. Yeah. And, good, definitely. Even if it's early access, good time to get in maybe at the ground floor, because every time they roll something out, you'll be ready and there to actually look at it and embrace it, rather than having to play 20 to 30 hours to get to that sort of content. So, that is Zenith, and we'll be looking forward to talking about that again next week in what should just start to be called the Zenith podcast. But right now, actually, we're not calling it the Zenith podcast because the podcast is not brought to you by Zenith. It's brought to you by Les Mills Body Combat, our sponsor, who we'd like to thank again. This is a new fitness game on the Oculus Quest, available as of today. Should have launched mere minutes ago. If we're putting this podcast live when we say we put it live, it's a martial arts inspired workout featuring featured in the real world in thousands of gyms globally. And yes, you can now try it in VR. So thank you again to our sponsor, Les Mills Combat. A link to the Oculus Store page is below me somewhere. Not in the video, in the description. So you got to scroll. You might have to click see more. See more. Anyway, let's move on to our next game. Harry, did you get a chance to check out Ultrawings 2 today, or did you not get time?
But it was a very, very small amount. But I played enough of it to kind of, I played probably like somewhere between half an hour to an hour. I think, sadly, again, this is not the game for me. But I think mainly because with this one, it's a motion kind of sickness thing. It is pretty intense.
It's very
even
intense.
with like I use the halfway comfort setting thing only because even if it sounds kind of maybe fussy or whatever, I hate like putting on so many comfort settings that, the vignette is like, I mean, I don't know. I didn't try it, so I don't know what it is, but I usually go for like the kind of medium, setting because I don't want it to be fully kind of limiting.
Closed off.
And I played like probably 3 or 4 missions, somewhere around there, the first couple. So I got a feel for the plane and flying around. And I'm also terrible I didn't do any shooting. That's the only thing. I didn't do shooting, but I did flying. I'm terrible at this kind of plane flying. Like I'm really bad at it. I was like crashing immediately. I was like, am I going the right direction? Then I thought I had it, and then I was still. So I'm no good at like piloting a plane like this. It's the same thing with Flight Simulator. I love Flight Simulator, but I played it on a very easy mode where almost everything was taken care of for me. So, but it does seem like a really solid, flying kind of simulator. I love the kind of being able to use the rudder or use the stick. It was fun to move. It did what it said on the packer kind of thing really well. So what are your thoughts on it?
So I'm glad you gave a lot of the things we're going to touch on there. Could you get an image of this? We don't want Hideo looking over us as we talk about.
We don't want him on there.
We have a lot of respect for you, Hideo, but you're encroaching on our privacy right now. The thing to say about it for me, and I'll spiel a little bit until we got the image. The thing to say about it for me is that I was in the same camp as you, and I had an interview and a preview earlier this year where I said to the developers of the game, like, flight games are not traditionally my thing. I have, like you, I have all the respect in the world for Flight Simulator. And if I was to review the game, I would give it an essential, just because I know that it is the completely ridiculously in-depth, incredible experience that a very specific set of people want. And like the world looks amazing and everything like that. But I'm not going to be able to sit there and enjoy it myself because there's just far too much to figure out. And I'm not a pilot, and I don't really have any aspirations to be. And that was my fear going into Ultrawings 2 as well. But having said all of that, I am really, really, really surprised to say that I absolutely love Ultrawings 2. I am pretty enamored by it. So I had a similar starting experience to you. You start off with this. Basically, there are 5 aircraft in the game. You kind of complete missions to get enough money to buy each different aircraft and also unlock different airports around 4 main islands, each airport unlocking new missions. And you start off with this kind of one-man chopper that's very like swoopy. It's actually like the most sickness-inducing thing in the game. Actually, it's interesting they started with this one because it's you kind of get the whole hang of it like pretty quickly, but it really does like throw you in at the deep end in terms of, okay, we are playing an intense VR game where I'm going to be swooping and barrel rolling and everything like that, and I just need to either learn to get it to sit in my stomach, or I'm probably not going to get on with the game. It uses a virtual flight stick control, and I'm glad to hear you say like you were kind of getting on board with that and you like the option as well, because I didn't think the virtual flight stick would work for me at all. But I think through very smart use of haptic feedback to kind of let you know just about where you're tipping it and stuff. Like it kind of clicks every time that you like shift it in one direction or another, and then you've got some vibration to know that you're like maybe getting near to the edge of where you can steer it. I think it's a really well designed system that after a couple of hours of gameplay, even though I knew I could probably get more accuracy out of using the touch sticks, I just found that such an immersive and engaging way to control any of the aircraft, basically, that I wouldn't go back to the sticks, even if like I was trying to get like a better medal in a mission. Um, and so the thing about it is you have all these different missions, 5 different type of aircraft, 4 different islands. There's an enormous amount of content in the game that each aircraft has its own specific missions for each island pretty much. So when you start with that one-man chopper and you play, maybe it takes an hour or 2 to get the second aircraft, you're not done with that first chopper. And the next time you unlock an airport, you're going to go back and find an increasing range of different activities to do with that first aircraft too. Switch over to the second aircraft, switch over to the third, and there's an entirely different set of missions waiting for you on that island as well. And they all kind of like build in ways that keep the game fresh. So with that chopper, for example, you start off with kind of just like basic ring flights, like getting through rings as fast as possible or as accurately as possible. And then up to where I am now, I've got missions where not only are there missions where I have to try and land in a certain place as like pinpoint as possible, but multiple times am I having to land and take off. Or
Yeah, right.
there's even missions where, and these are in the first game, but there are even missions where there are balloons around the world and you have to pick up a revolver and shoot them as you're flying around. And so there's a lot of variety even within just one type of aircraft, and you could get almost a full game's worth of content out of any one aircraft in the game. But the thing I really, really love about it is that anytime you switch to another aircraft, you are playing essentially a completely different game. The third aircraft, which is pretty much where I'm up to right now, is one called the Comet, which is a rocket fueled jet. It burns through its fuel really, really quickly, so you have to use it very, very sparingly. Use it to get you up into the air, and then basically turn it off and glide through the rest of it. So
That's super fun.
yeah, and it completely changes the dynamic. And so you basically have 5 games in one where you're learning something completely different, and then you've got a whole different set of objectives for each one. And I think they've put such an amazing amount of variety in there, and also very, very tightly designed variety. So the big new addition to the game is combat, which obviously you had the balloon combat in the first game, but the balloons weren't shooting back. Now you've got like drones and things that shoot back at you in some of the aircraft. And I was worried that was going to be that thing. You know, again, not being big on flight simulators like Star Wars Squadrons never really clicked with me either. Like I don't like
Yeah.
I don't like feeling like
I
all I'm
know.
doing is twisting
Yeah.
around perpetually forever.
I
And
I would have loved that game, but again, I couldn't fly the plane properly. It was like the same problem. I was like, oh, I don't know, this isn't quite clicking.
yeah,
But I hypothetically loved the Star Wars part of it and being in the
yeah.
ships, but like could not fly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about that here is the combat is very punchy and visceral. Visceral was the word I was trying to put in my review last night. Remember
There
that?
you go. You found it.
Timestamp this. Visceral, visceral, visceral.
Yeah,
Um,
visceral.
yeah, it's like a couple of shots to bring down an enemy. You know, you have complete control over your speed. You can get up into close proximity really, really quickly. And I think it's by design. You keep getting these really incredible moments where you're like almost going to collide, or like you blow up an enemy just as you like fly through them or something like that. And it's really fun cinematic kind of style of action. And they think of, again, even the combat, they keep coming up with new ways to interact with it. So there's this kind of almost Mario Kart drone mode where you're going through those rings, but then drones appear and you get extra points for taking them down. So there's it's kind of like going around a race course and using power-ups or something along those lines. And everything I was doing in the game was either making me feel like really empowered and like this is so much fun. I feel like such a great pilot and I feel so professional and cool, even though never ever ever trust me in an actual cockpit for even a split second. And then you have different emotions you get from all the different types of objectives out there. One thing you have to do a lot in the game is land, and you get the hang of it over
Yeah, I would
time.
not be good at that.
No, you get the hang of it over time, but it is a really, really tricky science at the start.
Yeah.
And again, you have to
Yeah.
learn it 5 times over for 5 different craft, basically. Um, and that does feed into one of my complaints about the game, which is even though it is a really fun, kind of heart racing experience to judge a landing and make sure you're going to touch down without crashing, a lot of the missions ask you to land after finishing off the objective. So if you do like a 10-minute mission, and let's say it's a really, really tough mission, and you get a gold, and you're like, I cannot believe I got a gold. That is absolutely fantastic. You then
Don't
turn
tell me you
around,
failed the landing
you
and then
botch the
do it again.
landing, you're going to have to
Oh
do it all again.
no.
Which
Nah.
I spoke to the developer
Oh,
about it, and they said that's a key part of difficulty balancing in the game for us. And I understand, again, for a lot of the flight aficionados out there, they're like,
yeah.
what are you complaining about? That's cool. That's how you fly. And I do appreciate that. I just also, it reminds me of early era Grand Theft Auto games where you'd get to the end of a really, really long mission, accidentally flip the car with the NPC in it, and the car would blow up. And they'd
Yeah.
be like, sorry, you have to do the entire mission again. It's not,
Yeah.
you can have options like that in there for the absolute hardcore player, while still catering to kind of more casual
Totally.
people like me that want to just
Mm-hmm.
really bank the win as soon as I've got it.
Yeah.
And to that point as well, the other thing I would like to see with the game is you have this big overworld map with these 4 different islands, but you basically have to jump in and out of the cockpit between every mission, and go back and select a new one. I would love to see some sort of Burnout Paradise style overworld where you can fly up to the missions, fly through a garage to change your vehicle on the fly,
Yeah.
just so you're staying inside it more. Because every time you crash as well, if you haven't pressed the pause menu and then restarted the mission before you crash, it takes you back to the menu to reselect the mission, put the
Yeah.
helmet on again, which isn't the loading's very, very quick. So it's not the end of the world, but it's also just like a few more extra steps
Mm-hmm.
than
Totally.
I would like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those are kind of those are things that I think could and hopefully will be fixed with the game. And outside of that, I've just been having such a good time with it, and a surprisingly good time with it because, like I said, I'm like you, flight games not really my thing. I think this gets a really good balance of accessibility and some level of authenticity in terms of the cockpit
That's
controls. And
that's what I feel like. I got that even from like, half an hour with it. Even though I was like, yeah, the main reason I stopped was not because I was getting frustrated, because I started to feel sick and I was like, well, I'm just going to leave that there for today. But I could tell from playing, I was like, if you did a lot of this, you get really good at it.
yep,
And you can you get that instinct kind of like, oh yeah, I don't know how to do this yet, but I can learn, which I think is
mm,
always a great feeling. The thing I love too is that the scale is super interesting, and I think that's
yep,
what makes it feel kind of really fun to fly, because it's like you're flying over a model town. Really, it's not
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
size. Like everything looks like you could pick it up.
yep,
So it means you cover a lot of ground quickly, and it looks kind of fun to fly around. It doesn't look like you're flying over nothing for ages. It merges kind of like simulator with
yeah,
like arcade gameplay, and I think you're right in that there's like huge potential even for like another game for this to be like a racing game, a bit like a Forza Horizon, where you've got different areas,
yep.
different objectives, different planes. You're flying around naturally around the world doing that kind of stuff. That could be super fun. Yeah. But
Yeah,
I think it's
100%.
it's really cool. Like it's cool. I could see how it works, even though I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get sick and probably not be able to play much of this. Which is, if you can get it from the get go, that's always good.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Like we were talking about Zenith, and we're saying, look, if I was David Jagner, former UploadVR Starfire, yeah, I know it would be an essential
Yeah,
100%.
would
And
love it.
for this, for someone like David Heaney, current UploadVR Starfire, this is so like his jam. He's going to really, really get into this and appreciate the controls and like the kind of intricacies of it. He's gonna be the person that loves that you have to be very, very strict with the landing, and that the game is very, very strict
Yeah,
with you in a lot
yeah,
of different ways.
yeah,
Because the other thing about it is that you get free like levels of medals, obviously bronze, silver, gold, each of which earns you more and more money. So it is necessary to do pretty well to unlock the entire game, basically. And
yeah,
it's going to take you upwards of about I'm going to say like 20 hours to get like all the aircraft and most of the airports. And then all that basically means is you've got all the missions then to go and do. So there's still basically the rest of the game out there. And I couldn't tell you just how much longer that's going to take, but certainly a lot more gameplay in there. And with the replayability of already just in one mission trying over and over again to get the gold, it's just an enormously generous and wealthy experience. And I think if you have any passing interest in it, if you played the first Ultrawings and thought it was pretty cool, I think you're really, really going to get a kick out of it. And I am very, 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 very positive on it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. The other thing too, I think, which just came to me looking at this picture with the scale thing and the art style of it. The other game I have, or frame of reference, I guess, for this game is Warplanes,
Yep.
which I think is really good as well. That's a bit more like combat kind of, shooting war stuff. But the one thing about that I think, which is kind of because it has to be like this, but you're flying over nothing a lot of the time, or at least like some of the early missions I played, it felt like there was a lot of open spaces. The space was not a space, it was the planes and stuff, which is cool. But in this, I like that it's like really, it almost looks a bit like a city skylines kind of like, model that you're flying over, which I think
idyllic village
visually
sort of,
adds so much to it.
Yeah, and it's really impressive on Quest because the draw distance is really, really good.
Yeah, it is. You can see like a lot. Yeah.
And part of that is because there's just so long to fly between islands that that really the game's doing all its loading then, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
But like you said, like there is such a on the island you're on, you'll see everything in view in really, really good, vibrant detail. And I'm really looking forward to the PC VR version, which is coming later. But I think even on Quest, I think it's a really impressive technical achievement for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. So that's Ultrawings 2. My written review will hopefully be going up on the site either later today, if it's not already up, or Friday. And we'll have this embedded as the kind of review for it as well. I think that pretty much brings us to the end of another fine episode of the VR Gamescast. Harry, thank you so much for joining us. Or me.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, well, no, thank you for having me. Another good episode. 2 in the can.
Cool. Yeah. Next week, as we said, VVR2 is out, so I think you'll probably be here to talk about.
I think that lines up because I'm doing the review. I think the release embargo, all that stuff lines up with when we put it out. So I'll probably be talking about that, which will be fun.
Cool. I'll definitely be checking that out too. I think we'll also have some other stuff to be talking about. But for now, you have a great week in VR and in real life. Don't neglect real life. It's important. I've been Jamie Felton. You've been Harry Baker. We'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys. Thank you.